I'm so glad to see you, and it's so nice to have you talk about our neighbors and meet new friends and learn more about our community. Today, we have a particularly interesting person, and his name is Francis Donchez, and he is the Chief of Police of the City of Overland Park. Welcome, Frank.
Thanks for having me.
I am delighted because I think that as these people, you know, you're kind of new. You here from October.
It's October of 14, so I've been here a
14.
little over 2 years.
Well, then you have had a good taste of one of the best cities in the whole world.
Oh, it's terrific. It's terrific. I'm glad to be here.
You know, I have to tell you that I was an Overland Parker for 22 years, and I now live in Leawood, but Overland Park is a wonderful place, and having served on the Planning Commission and being a real part of this city, I know that the police department is dedicated to the safety and to the welfare of its citizens and the men and women who protect them. But I think, now these are your words, and you said, as your police chief, I ensure our department serves the community with integrity. We accomplish this by treating every individual with whom we interact fairly, lawfully, and professionally. And you said, I'm proud to be a member of this organization and their commitment to the people of Overland Park, which I think summarizes who you are.
Well, I am proud to be here, and you know, I inherited a terrific police department, and those words that you just read, I mean, that's the truth. You know, police departments build, they build relationships with their community, and I'm just so amazed at the support that we get from this community, and so that tells me that trust and that relationship has been going on for a long time, long before I got here, and we treat people with respect. We go out of, we try to go above and beyond, which is the Overland Park motto, but we do. We really take that to heart, and I think that we get paid back with a whole lot of love and respect from the citizens we serve. And so it's a great, like I say, those relationships, it has to be a two-way street. And I think it is, and I think we're a shining example for other communities.
I have to tell you something funny. My son was about 16. And I came home one afternoon, and it was kind of dusk because I was working. And here comes John pedaling his bicycle down the street, and a police car is following him very slowly behind. And I thought, oh, what has happened? So we got to the house, and the policeman said to me, he's riding his bicycle with no light, and I was afraid he would get hit. So I am seeing that he has gotten home. Now that is above and beyond.
Right.
And that to me illustrates the commitment, not only your commitment as chief, but the commitment of every single officer and employee of the law enforcement in Overland Park.
Well, and that goes into our hiring practices. I think that when we vet people to hire them, we look at people that hold those values and that they want to perform this profession in that manner. And so I think the hiring process is one of the best ways to build a professional organization.
I do too. And I think that our neighbors are kind of interested in what you've done before you came here. And I know that you started in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania.
Yes.
And then you were police commissioner there, were you not?
Right.
Yeah.
So it's the police chief, it's just a different title.
Oh, I see. And then you were a consultant in Easton, Pennsylvania.
Yes.
So, and this is 81 when you were in Bethlehem.
I actually started in a small town right next to the city of Bethlehem called the borough of Hellertown. It's 5,000 population. Started there when I was 19 in the summer of 1979, and I worked there for almost 2 years till I was old enough to get onto the Bethlehem Police Department.
Isn't that something? Well, the other thing that I think is interesting, that you are a lawyer and you have practiced law.
I have.
Do you find that that's helpful or not so helpful? I don't know.
I think it's helpful because it enhances your ability to see both sides of an issue. Mm-hmm. And so I think that sometimes in policing that can be a hindrance where we aren't as open-minded as we should be. And so I think that has helped me to see and understand both sides of an issue. So,
And actually, practicing law, I think, has probably been helpful too.
well, I'd like to believe that it has enhanced my communication skills, if nothing else.
Well, you practiced law for 6 years.
Yes.
So
yes.
that, and now you're getting a master's degree in public administration.
I'm working on it slowly but surely. Obviously,
Well,
this is a time-consuming position. So,
I was going to say you have a
Yeah.
few other things to do.
yes.
I think you've also been to the FBI National Academy. Why did you do that?
Well, it's something I actually always wanted to do. That is, in policing, that is one of the crown jewels for your resume or for your career, is to get to go to the FBI National Academy. It's a 10-week course where they have, actually from all over the world, police officers come, and 250 in each class, and 50 of those 250 are from other countries.
And that's nice. I didn't know that.
It's great relationship building, and the whole idea it was started probably back in the 70s was to build that coalition so that you can reach out to people throughout the country, and the FBI kind of built this network of local and state police officers who could kind of work together and communicate. And so it was, I finally got a chance to go when I was in Davenport. We never sent anybody from the city of Bethlehem. But when I got to Davenport, I met some FBI agents. They asked if I had ever gone. I said, no, always wanted to. Figured I had given up on that when I retired from Bethlehem. And they said, no, we'll get you in. And so in 2009, I got to go to the FBI Academy, which was
That's very
terrific.
helpful.
It was
That's
terrific.
very helpful. Did you ever think about becoming an FBI agent?
I did not. Hard to believe, but back when I started my career, I didn't even want to be a Pennsylvania State Trooper because I might have to move halfway across the state. And so my whole life was in the Lehigh Valley, Allentown, Bethlehem, Easton area. Couldn't even imagine. So it's kind of funny that I'm sitting here
I was
about
gonna say,
1,100 miles away
Look
right
what's
now.
happened to you.
But
That's right.
things change. Your life moves on, and you take advantage of the opportunities that come up.
Well, you've done something else that I think is kind of interesting, and I'm sure helps you from time to time, and that's the Secret Service dignitary training.
Yes, that was
Dignitary
very
protection
interesting.
training,
Yeah, that was
yeah.
very interesting. I went to that back when I was in the city of Bethlehem. I was an administrative lieutenant at the time, and I actually got to be the coordinator when Vice President under Clinton, Al Gore, I
Al
remember
Gore,
his name. Al
yeah.
Gore came for a visit, and so I got to coordinate that for the police department, and it was interesting. You learned a whole lot about what goes into protecting these dignitaries, and then it worked even better because when I got to Davenport, Iowa, as you know, Iowa is ground zero for the elections,
Right,
and
right.
in 2012 we actually had 13 visits for the presidential election between the president coming and the candidates and those supporting. So it was really intense in Davenport, and I was kind of glad that I had that training.
Absolutely, but I would suggest to you that the protection of the dignitaries has changed some because I think the people who would do them harm have become bolder.
Oh, there's no doubt that the threats and the aggressive nature that people has changed over the years, and it probably has changed just even in the last 20 years.
Well, when you were in Iowa, I'm sure that there were threats that came through that you had to watch for.
Right. Well, fortunately for law enforcement, our intelligence and the use of social media monitoring and all these things certainly helps us in identifying these threats and getting out ahead of the curve.
But boy, some of these people are nuttier than I don't know what. I mean, and when people are kind of off their track, it's hard to deal with them because they don't do things that are expected of normal.
They're unpredictable. Absolutely.
Exactly, yeah. I read someplace one time, and I think it's true, that in a real democracy, you have to have a number of things, but two very important ones, and that is a set of enforceable laws and a way to enforce those laws.
Absolutely.
And without that,
Absolutely.
anarchy doesn't work very well. So
Exactly, and I know that we as a profession have been under fire. There's been a lot of things in the media about policing And we've made some mistakes. There's no doubt about it. We're going to make mistakes. But what's interesting is we have, as a profession in the United States, over 12 million arrests a year. That's not contacts with people as going on calls and whatnot, but that's actual arrests. And so when you think about
that's not just tickets.
No,
That's
that's
arrest.
arrest.
Yeah.
Hands on
Okay.
taking somebody into custody, over 12 million. And there are obviously a handful of notable cases where you see on CNN where the police have made mistakes, but that's a handful out of over 12 million. I think we're doing a pretty darn good job.
I do, but I also have to say right here that people forget that the police persons, be they male or female, are human, and they're afraid too. And I think that it's very easy to lay blame on the police force, and it isn't always well placed, because they have to be careful too. And I think that it's a shame, because I am a major proponent of the police force and the job that they do, and it really upsets me to see them getting shortchanged. I really don't like that.
Well, it is a
say that.
difficult position, because when we're giving somebody a ticket, they want us to be compassionate, but when somebody steal something from them, they want us to be tough. So
That's right.
you can never please everybody.
No, you can't. But I have to tell you, the first ticket I ever got, gosh, I must have been in my middle 30s, and I was in a hurry to get home for lunch, and I was coming across 100th Street, and I got nabbed. I cried. I was so upset, because I never had a ticket before, and the policeman was very nice. I guess he thought this poor woman is coming to pieces right on my watch, and but I was so really upset. But you're right, it's a hard role to play, and we have to be very appreciative of the role that the people who protect us and enforce the laws and allow us to live in a democracy do. So I must say that. But problems do arise, so we need to bring some of those up. Racial bias is one of those that really looms its head more and more, and I'm sure that Overland Park has had that problem facing it as well. What do you do in police training?
Well, several things.
Okay.
To address the training, our officers, when they come on the department, when they go to the academy, they get training in racial bias, anti-bias policing, that sort of thing. But what we do is we certainly have policies and procedures that try to inhibit that type of behavior, and continue to train officers, train them on diversity training and racial profile training. But then the other thing that we have in Overland Park, we have a bias policing board, and that board is made up of a vast cross-section. There's 7 members, but there are African American members, there are men, there are women, there are Muslims, there are Jews, there are Asians, Latinos. It's a broad cross-section.
I didn't know that.
Yes.
I did not.
And so what happens is, though they're appointed by the mayor, and all complaints of racial bias, whether they're founded or unfounded, after we send them through our professional standards, that's our internal affairs, they do an investigation, and then they render a finding on their investigation. All of those complaints then go before this board for review, and then they make a recommendation. They can concur with the findings. So let's say an officer is investigating, he's accused of some sort of racial bias. You stop me because I'm African American. And so we do our investigation, and we find no evidence of that. But that whole case then is presented to this board, and the board will then either concur with our findings, or if they don't concur, they can say, we don't concur, and then they'll make a recommendation to me as the chief. And that recommendation may be, your officers need to have more training, that officer, needs training in this, or you need to adjust your policies regarding X, Y, or Z, and so they can make those recommendations. And so I'm very proud of the fact that we have this board, because I think it does help the accountability of
It's
the
a
Overland
check
Park
and
Police
a
Department.
balance.
It
A
is.
check
It
and a
absolutely
balance.
is,
And
because we have another set of eyes that are not police officers looking at it, and also looking at it from the perspective of those various minorities within the community.
You know, what really does bother me though, and that is the youth that get taken into the system. And I'm not sure that any police department or city is ready to deal as they should with some of these kids. Some of these kids are in the system because they can't read, because they, for many reasons, but one of them, big one, is because they can't read and they can't hold a job, and they don't feel and aren't productive. And you know, years ago, Overland Park used to have a program where every underage person taken into the juvenile system was tested. And they found that, I forget, it's been so long ago I can't remember the percentage, but a huge percentage of them could not read. Therefore, they couldn't do basic math, they couldn't write well, and so they ran out of money and the program stopped. But it was a very good program. And the reason I know it is because I was at the University of Kansas then, and we collected the data through the special ed department at the Med Center. Don Deschler was the person in charge of collecting that data, and it was a really good program. But just to stick them in, incarcerate them with older people is not a very good
Well,
thing.
and above and beyond that, you know, I think one of the things that we as a society need to balance is keeping order in the schools, but also allowing for kids to be kids. And I think that we have kind of gotten away from that. And I know there'll be some that argue that it needs to be that way, but I think what has happened is we've criminalized a lot of behavior, and that criminalization of that behavior has had a negative impact on these children as they start growing up. Listen, I'm sitting here as the chief of police in Overland Park, and I can tell you right now that some of my junior high teachers that broke up fights that I was involved in wouldn't believe that I was sitting here as the police chief. But fortunately for me, you got in trouble and they told you to stop fighting, and it was over with. But now some of these kids are coming out of middle school with criminal records, and I really do think it's damaging their potential and their future.
Oh, I just don't think there's any question about it. And you know, I think also that one of the things that plagues law enforcement is the accusation of brutality, and that may be true and it may not be true.
Well,
and it's hard to, but the cameras help. Yes,
they do. But you know, it's interesting. Until you have been in that situation, what may look like brutality sometimes is just trying to get control of somebody. And I'll tell you what, you can get a 150 pound male that's a wiry little scrappy person, and I'll tell you what, they can if they don't want to be handcuffed, they'll put up a fight where I'm not so sure that 3 Kansas City Chiefs could get them handcuffed. So
I think you're right.
You know, you have to take some of those videos that you see with a grain of salt, because until you've been in a position of trying to get somebody under control and handcuffed that doesn't want to be handcuffed, you need to reserve judgment.
See, and I think that point is well made and a very important point to make. What you think you see is not always what it is.
Right.
And so that's, but you know, I was kind of looking at this and that, and I think a good humor goes a long way. I saw this and I said, and I thought I have to use it. It said, this is the bomb squad's motto: if you see us running, you better catch up.
Right.
So I think, you know, there is some benefit in a good humor about the whole situation, but you got to be tough and you can't back up. And it's especially, you know, one of the major problems that we face today is a matter of guns out on the street. Everybody has a gun. I don't happen to have a gun. I can't see without my glasses, and by the time I got ready, I just say, now hold still, I'm coming right into it, I'm looking for the bullet right now. But guns are problematic because lots of people have guns and they're easy to come by.
They are, and so that's another component to what we have to deal with. Obviously, we as police officers, we want to go home at the end of the day.
Yes.
And by virtue of the fact, referees carry a whistle to work, accountants carry a pencil to work, we carry a gun to work. So, that already tips you off that it's a dangerous profession, and, that's a reality that we face, and we accept that. I mean, that goes along with it. When you sign up,
Well, that's the deal.
That's a possibility, but it doesn't make it any easier, and so we rely on our training and hope for the best.
I hope so. I think I'd like for you, if you would, to profile a person that you would consider an excellent police person. I'd like a profile of what you're looking for, gender not, I don't know, maybe you look at the gender, I don't know.
No, we don't. In fact, here's an interesting statistic. Overland Park Police Department, we have over 16% of our force is female. The national average is 11%, so we're way above the national average.
You go, Frank.
And
that's
so,
wonderful.
but no, we're not looking for any particular gender,
so
race. But here's what we're looking for.
Yeah, I want to know.
We're looking for people that have a sense of community service. If you don't have that sense of service, if you're not there to serve, then we probably don't want you. We want people that are compassionate. We want people that are fair. And we want people that want to help other people, genuinely. Listen, I've been through enough interviews that, why do you want to be a police officer? I want to help people. That's a standard answer.
Yeah.
But you need to dig down deeper into that and get to the real, the root of it. Because anybody could spout, I want to help people.
Sometimes.
But,
Yeah.
but through a series of questions, and we have a very detailed interview panel that's made up of one of our Civil Service Commission members, which is a civilian. They always serve on the interview panel. We have an HR person on the panel, and then we have several of our police. We'll have an assistant chief and a major, and
so a lot of eyes look at this person.
a lot of eyes,
Yeah.
and they know what the values of the city of Overland Park are. Responsibility and accountability and all of those things that we're looking for, service-minded, relationship building, integrity. We're looking for those
Good
things.
health.
So,
Good
well,
health. And somebody who likes people.
exactly. That's the funny thing, and it's unfortunate because I've seen officers get jaded. So those same people that have said to me in an interview, I want to be a police officer because I want to help people, 3 years down the road, I hear them complaining about people. I said, wait a minute, aren't you the guy that told me you wanted to help people? So, there are some people do get burned out and cynical because we do see a lot of crazy things. And here's a news flash, people do lie to us all the time. But what we're looking for is people that hold those values and want to serve the public. And like I say, compassion and respect are just two big components of what we're looking for, because it's not about locking up bad guys. And if your whole reason you want to be a police officer is because you want to lock up bad guys and arrest bank robbers, then Overland Park's probably not the place for you. We're going to do that. When we have to do that, we do that. But that service component, that pulling over to the side of the road because you see a motorist stranded, that helping people out. We have numerous examples of officers that have reached into their own wallets to buy shoes for somebody that doesn't have shoes, to buy a hotel room for a family that's been kicked out and doesn't have a place to stay for the night. Those are the kind of people that we're looking for.
Right. I also think it's interesting because law enforcement is not always, and in total, policemen out on the street. Overland Park has a wonderful lab.
Oh, absolutely.
Where they
we use the
process-
Johnson County lab, and we have our own people that do crime scenes, but we do rely on the Johnson County Sheriff's Department and their lab. And then we also have crime analysts. Our cadre of crime analysts provide a lot of good feedback to us as to where crimes are occurring, trends, and get us the information we need so that we can get out there and do our job.
Are those people statisticians, psychologists? What are they?
They are civilians.
What is their background?
some of them are former police officers.
Are they?
And but they do a lot of that statistician because they're looking at trends, they're looking at, crime statistics and putting all that together. But they're a tremendous help to what we do.
So it isn't always the men in blue.
Oh, absolutely.
And men and women in blue.
Listen, dispatchers, that's our first point of contact. When you dial
That's a hard
911,
job.
you're
That is-
not getting a police officer, you're getting a civilian, and we count on them to get the information and relay it in a timely manner and an accurate manner because our lives depend on it.
That's a
so,
very difficult
yeah,
job.
there's a lot of working pieces to this machine.
Well, and being chief of police, you have to juggle a lot of plates in the air and keep an eye on many, many facets of the law enforcement whole.
Yes. Well, fortunately for me, I have a fabulous command staff, and they make my job easy.
If you talk to young people in high school, let's say, and they say to you, I want to go into law enforcement, how do you tell them to prepare?
I think, again, they need to prepare mentally for that service mentality, prepare themselves for being able to see and do a lot of the things that we do. We have some people that get into the profession and they see some of the nastier things that we see and say, wow, I didn't realize that I was going to have to deal with that, and they leave. Education's important, but I think that more importantly, it is that service mindset coming into it. You can always get more. We're going to give you training. We're going to send you to the academy. We're going to give you constantly update your training, but that mindset, I can't change that. You have to come in with that mindset.
You do, but you also have to educate yourself because it's important to know your job.
It is, and that comes through that training. Again, it's beneficial to have a college education, but in my opinion, and some other chiefs may disagree, but in my opinion, that's not the end-all be-all.
Do you insist on some sort of higher education before?
We prefer it. We do prefer that you have at least an associate's degree when you apply, but it's not mandatory. I mean, we have a lot of people that come to us with a military background that don't have the college, but they have quite a few years in the military.
Well, as I say thank you to Chief Donchez for coming, I would have to say that in Overland Park, you don't have to get ready if you stay ready.
Right.
And Overland Park is ready to protect us and to see to it that we continue to live in this wonderful community that we call home. Thank you, Frank.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being with us. It's always, always nice to have you. I'll see you soon again.